The signal came from the darkness between stars, carried on waves of pure desperation. Ambassador Veltar pressed his crystal hands against the communication array, his entire body glowing with the pale blue light that marked his species in times of great fear. Around him, the last survivors of his people worked frantically in the underground bunkers of Altair Prime, their homeworld now nothing more than a burning shell above their heads. "Send it again," Veltar whispered to the technician beside him. "Someone must hear us. The prophecy says they will come." The technician, her crystal skin flickering with doubt, activated the transmitter once more. The message burst out into space, searching for any who might listen. It spoke of ancient words written in their holy books, words that promised salvation when the darkness came. It told of beings of light who would arrive from distant stars, beings with the power to banish evil with a single thought. 3,000 light years away, Admiral Taman sat in his command chair aboard the human flagship Iron Dawn. He was a short man by human standards, with graying hair and scars that told stories of a dozen battles. His uniform was plain and practical, nothing like the flowing robes the Altarians imagined their saviors would wear. The bridge around him buzzed with activity as his fleet returned from their latest mission against space pirates. "Admiral," called Captain Sora from her position at the navigation console. She was younger than Taman, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and hands that never shook even in the worst fights. "We're picking up something strange. Long-range communications, but not from any human colonies." Taman turned his attention to the main screen. "Put it through." The alien message filled the bridge, translated by the ship's computer into words the humans could understand. It spoke of a mechanical plague that devoured worlds, of peaceful people who had never known war, and of a desperate hope that someone, anyone, would come to help them. Dr. Wu Jin, the fleet's chief scientist and diplomat, leaned forward in his chair. He was a thin man who preferred books to battles, but he had chosen to serve with the fleet because someone had to speak for humanity when words mattered more than weapons. "This is remarkable," he said, studying the message. "They're not just asking for help. They believe we're destined to save them. Their entire religion seems built around the idea that saviors will come from the stars." Commander He Jin, leader of the fleet's Marines, laughed harshly. She was a woman who had grown up in the slums of Old Seoul, fighting for every scrap of food and every breath of clean air. The military had given her purpose, but it had never made her soft. "Saviors? They're asking the wrong species. We're better at making problems than solving them." Taman studied the data streaming across his screen. The Altarians were under attack by something called the Void Swarm, machines that consumed everything in their path. 3 worlds had already fallen. The attackers showed no mercy and took no prisoners. They simply arrived, stripped a world bare, and moved on to the next target. "How far away are they?" Taman asked. 2 days at maximum jump speed," Sora replied. "But Admiral, we don't know anything about this enemy. Our databases have no records of this void swarm. We could be jumping into a fight we can't win." Taman looked around his bridge. These people had followed him through hell more times than he could count. They had faced pirates and rebels, corrupt governors and alien predators. None of them had ever backed down from a fight, but this was different. This was stepping into the unknown to help people they had never met. "What does our intelligence say about Altarian military capabilities?" he asked. Wu Jin consulted his tablet. "From what we can determine, they don't have any. Their culture appears to be entirely peaceful. They've never developed weapons of war or military tactics. They seem to have believed their isolation, and their faith would protect them. And now they're dying because they were wrong," Hyejin said grimly. "The universe doesn't care about your faith when something wants to kill you." Taman stood up slowly. He walked to the main viewing port and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying. They weren't human people, but they were people nonetheless. They had families and dreams and hopes for the future, just like anyone else. The fact that they had mistaken humans for divine beings didn't change that. "All ships," he said, activating the fleet-wide communication system. "This is Admiral Taman. We've received a distress call from a species called the Altarians. They're under attack by something called the Void Swarm. They're asking for help." He paused, letting his words sink in across the 27 ships of his fleet. Each vessel carried men and women who had volunteered to stand between humanity and its enemies. They had signed up knowing they might die far from home, fighting for people who would never know their names. "I won't lie to you," Taman continued. "We don't know what we're facing. These Void Swarm machines have already destroyed 3 worlds. We're going in blind and we might not be coming back, but there are people dying out there and they asked for help. I say we give it to them." The response came immediately. Every ship captain reported the same thing. Their crews were ready to fight. No one asked about the odds. No one complained about the risk. They were human, and humans had a saying that went back to their earliest days. No one fights alone. So Ra began plotting the jump coordinates while Hye-Jin started preparing her Marines for combat. Woo-Jin worked on learning everything he could about Altarian culture, hoping to avoid any diplomatic disasters when they arrived. "Admiral," Woo-Jin said after reviewing more of the alien transmissions, "there's something you should know. They really do believe we're divine beings sent to save them. Their prophecies describe us as beings of pure light who will banish darkness with our very presence. When we show up as regular humans with guns and ships, they're going to be disappointed." Taman smiled grimly. "Then they'll have to settle for what we are instead of what they want us to be. We might not be gods, but we're pretty good at killing things that need killing." The fleet began its jump sequence, 27 ships disappearing into hyperspace in flashes of blue light. Behind them, they left the safety of human space. Ahead of them waited an enemy they had never faced, fighting to save a people who expected miracles. On Altair Prime, Ambassador Veltar felt the change in the cosmic energies his people claimed to sense. Something was coming. Someone had heard their call and was rushing across the void to answer it. He gathered his people in their deepest shelter and began the ancient prayers of welcome, preparing to greet the beings of light who would surely save them all. Neither side knew that they were about to meet, and neither side knew how wrong their expectations would be. The Altarians expected gods. The humans expected another war. What they would find instead was something that would change both species forever. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace above Altair Prime, and what they found made even the veteran crews fall silent. The planet below them was dying. Where once had been green continents and blue oceans, now only fire and metal remained. Massive geometric ships, each the size of a city, hung in orbit like hungry spiders. They extended mechanical arms down to the planet's surface, strip mining entire mountain ranges in seconds. Admiral Taman gripped his command chair as he watched the destruction. "My God," he whispered. "How many people were down there?" Captain Sora worked frantically at her console, trying to get clear readings through the electromagnetic interference. Sensors show massive underground complexes. Most of the population appears to have gone below ground, but the machines are digging deeper every hour. Dr. Wu Jin stared at the alien ships with a scientist's eye and a diplomat's growing horror. Each vessel was a perfect geometric shape, covered in strange symbols that hurt to look at directly. "These aren't ships," he said quietly. "They're machines, pure machines. No organic components at all that I can detect." Commander Hye-Jin studied the tactical display with a warrior's eye. The Void Swarm ships moved in perfect formation, never wasting energy or making unnecessary movements. Everything they did served a single purpose: consumption. "How many are there?" she asked. 43 capital ships, Sora reported. Each one larger than our biggest battleship, plus hundreds of smaller craft doing the actual mining work. Before Taman could respond, an alien voice crackled over their communication system. The computer translated it instantly, but the tone of desperate hope needed no translation. "Beings of light, children of the eternal star, we knew you would come. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Altarian Council of Wisdom. We have waited so long for your arrival. Please show us your divine radiance and banish this darkness from our world." Taman looked around his bridge at his very human crew. Sora was checking weapon systems. Hye-Jin was preparing marine deployment plans. Wu Jin was analyzing alien technology. None of them glowed with divine light or showed any signs of cosmic power. "Open a channel," Taemin ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing Ambassador Veltar for the first time. He was tall and graceful, with skin that looked like living crystal. His features were sharp and elegant, and he moved with a flowing grace that spoke of centuries of peaceful evolution. Behind him, other Altarians bowed low, their crystal bodies flickering with what appeared to be religious ecstasy. "This is Admiral Taemin of the Terran Defense Force," Taemin said simply. "We received your distress call. We're here to fight." The silence that followed lasted far too long. Veltar's crystal features went through a series of expressions that the human translator couldn't identify. When he finally spoke, confusion colored every word. "Fight? But you are the chosen ones. The prophecy speaks of beings who will restore balance with their pure essence. You are meant to heal our world with your divine touch, not engage in violence." Wu Jin leaned forward, trying to salvage the situation. "Ambassador Veltar, I'm Dr. Wu Jin, our diplomatic representative. I think there may be some misunderstanding about our nature. We're not divine beings. We're soldiers from a planet called Earth. We came because you asked for help." The crystal being's light dimmed noticeably. "Soldiers?" But the sacred text clearly described the saviors as beings of pure light, who would arrive in our darkest hour. They would speak in cosmic harmonies and command the very forces of creation. "We speak in radio frequencies and command ships with really big guns," Hyejin muttered off-channel, earning her a sharp look from Taemin. More Altarians appeared on the screen, all of them looking confused and frightened. They spoke rapidly in their musical language, and even through the translator, the humans could hear their distress. "They're saying we don't match the prophecy," Wu Jin translated quietly. "They expected us to be tall and radiant, speaking in poetry and surrounded by light. Instead, we're short and scarred, speaking in military terms and surrounded by weapons." "Ambassador," Taemin said, trying to keep his voice gentle. "I know we're not what you expected, but we're what you got. And right now those machines are tearing your planet apart. We can help you fight them." Veltar's crystal hand shook as he gestured toward the surface of his dying world. "Fight? We don't know how to fight. We are a people of art and philosophy. Our greatest achievements are poems and sculptures, not weapons. We were supposed to be protected by our faith and our isolation." "How's that working out for you?" Sora asked bluntly, then immediately regretted it when she saw the alien's pained expression. Dr. Wu Jin quickly stepped in. "What the captain means is that sometimes faith isn't enough. Sometimes you need people willing to stand between you and the darkness. That's what we do." On the screen, more Altarians joined the conversation. They spoke in rapid, musical tones, their crystal bodies flickering with different colors. The debate was clearly heated, even if the humans couldn't understand the specifics. "They're arguing about whether we're really the prophesied saviors or if we're some kind of test," Wu Jin explained. "Some think we're demons sent to trick them. Others believe we're fallen angels who have lost our divine nature." "Tell them we're just people," Taemin said firmly. "We're not angels or demons. We're humans from a world that tried to kill us every single day, so we learned to kill it back. We're good at fighting because we had to be good at fighting to survive." When Wu Jin translated this, the reaction was immediate and disturbing. Several Altarians fled from the screen in terror. Others began what looked like prayers or protective rituals. Veltar himself stepped back, his crystal skin growing pale. "A world that tried to kill you," he whispered. "The sacred texts speak of the saviors coming from the garden of eternal peace, where all beings live in harmony with creation." "Earth isn't peaceful," Hyejin said, stepping into view of the camera. "Earth has storms that can level cities, animals that hunt in packs, diseases that kill millions, and 1,000 other ways to die before breakfast. We learn to survive by becoming tougher than everything trying to kill us." The Altarians on the screen looked horrified. In their minds, they had called for divine help and instead received violent beings from a nightmare world. The disconnect between expectation and reality was too great for many of them to process. Suddenly, alarms began blaring on the human bridge. Sora's voice cut through the confusion. "Admiral, Enemy contacts approaching from the dark side of the planet. 20. Vessels moving fast. Tayman's demeanor changed instantly from diplomat to warrior. Battle stations. All ships prepare for combat. Wait, Veltar cried from the screen. Surely you can simply command them to leave? The prophecy says the chosen ones can banish evil with a word. The only words that work on machines are please and thank you, Yejin said grimly, checking her sidearm. And somehow I don't think these things are programmed for politeness. The void swarm ships moved with mechanical precision, their geometric forms cutting through space like knives through silk. They showed no recognition of the human fleet's arrival, no attempt at communication, no hesitation in their approach. They simply came forward to destroy, as they had destroyed so many worlds before. Incoming transmission from the lead enemy vessel, Sora reported. Put it through, Tayman ordered. The signal that came back wasn't words or music or any form of communication the humans recognized. It was pure mathematics, cold equations that described efficiency and consumption rates. The message was clear without needing translation. Everything in this system would be processed. There would be no negotiation, no mercy, no exceptions. Well, Tayman said to his crew, I guess we do this the hard way. He turned back to the screen where Ambassador Veltar waited in growing panic. Ambassador, you wanted saviors. We're not that. We're something else entirely. We're the species that looked at a universe full of things trying to kill us and decided to kill them first. The first void swarm ship opened fire, its weapon striking the human destroyer, Courageous. The ship's shields flared and held, but just barely. All ships, Tayman ordered, his voice carrying across the fleet. Engage the enemy. Let's show these machines what happens when they pick a fight with Deathworlders. The battle for Altair Prime began with the thunder of human weapons and the Ein, screams of terrified aliens who had expected gods and received warriors instead. The space around Altair Prime erupted into chaos as the human fleet met the void swarm in battle. Captain Sora threw her ship into a spiral dive that would have killed a normal crew from the acceleration, but humans had evolved on a world where survival meant adapting to impossible conditions. Her crew stayed conscious and kept fighting while G-forces that should have crushed them pressed them into their seats. Target their weapon arrays, Sora shouted over the noise of battle. If we can't kill them, at least we can blind them. Though, Iron Dawn's main gun spoke, sending streams of superheated metal into the geometric hull of a void swarm ship. The alien vessel absorbed the damage without even changing course, its hull repairing itself almost instantly. But the humans had learned long ago that when something seemed impossible to kill, you just had to hit it harder and keep hitting it until it stopped moving. Ambassador Veltar watched the battle from his underground shelter, his crystal features reflecting the horror of what he was seeing. The beings he had expected to save his people with divine light were instead throwing themselves against impossible odds, with nothing but metal ships and explosive weapons. They fought like demons, using tactics that seemed designed to get themselves killed. Why do they fight so strangely? One of his advisors asked, watching as a human corvette deliberately rammed itself into a much larger void swarm vessel. The impact tore both ships apart, but the humans had managed to take out one of the enemy's main processors in the exchange. I don't understand, Veltar whispered. The prophecy never spoke of such violence. The chosen ones were supposed to bring peace, not war. On the bridge of the Iron Dawn, Admiral Tayman studied the tactical display with growing concern. His fleet was outnumbered 4-1, and the enemy ships were proving almost impossible to damage. Worse, the Void Swarm showed no signs of the confusion or fear that usually affected organic enemies when faced with human tactics. They simply adapted and continued fighting with mechanical efficiency. Admiral, Dr. Wu Jin called out, I'm picking up massive energy readings from the planet's surface. The mining operation is accelerating. They're trying to finish stripping the world before we can stop them. Commander Haye Jin appeared on the bridge, her combat armor scarred from boarding actions. Sir, we managed to take one of their smaller ships. My Marines are downloading their databanks now, but it's not good news. This isn't just a raiding force, it's a scouting fleet. The main swarm is 3 days behind them, and it's got over 1,000 ships. Taemin felt the weight of impossible odds settling on his shoulders. His fleet could barely handle 40 void swarm vessels. 1,000 would be a massacre. But looking at the faces of his crew, he saw no fear, only determination. These people had followed him this far, and they would follow him to the end. "Open a channel to all human ships and to the Altarian shelters," he ordered. When the connection was established, Taemin could see dozens of screens showing his scattered fleet. Each bridge was a scene of controlled chaos with humans working frantically to keep their ships fighting despite impossible damage. On the Altarian screens, he could see thousands of crystal beings huddled in their underground refugees, watching their supposed saviors die for them. "This is Admiral Taemin," he began, his voice carrying across space to reach both species. "I know this isn't what anyone expected. The Altarians called for divine beings to save them from this nightmare. Instead, they got us. We're not gods. We're not even particularly good people most of the time. We're just humans from a world that spent millions of years trying to kill us." He paused as another explosion lit up the space around them. A human destroyer taking critical damage but still firing its guns. "Earth is what we call a death world," Taemin continued. "Everything on it wants to eat you, poison you, crush you, burn you, or freeze you to death. The weather tries to kill you. The animals try to kill you. Even the plants try to kill you if you're not careful. We learn to survive by becoming meaner, tougher, and more stubborn than everything that wanted us dead." On the Altarian screens, Veltar leaned forward, his crystal skin flickering with colors the humans couldn't interpret. Around him, his people listened in stunned silence to words that challenged everything they had believed about their saviors. "We looked at a universe that said we didn't deserve to exist, and we said, 'Try and stop us,'" Taemin said, his voice growing stronger. "Every species we've met told us we were too violent, too aggressive, too willing to fight. Maybe they were, right. Maybe that makes us the worst possible choice for saviors." Another human ship, the destroyer Valiant, broke apart under concentrated fire from 3 void swarm vessels. But even as it died, its crew managed to detonate their reactor in the middle of the enemy formation, taking 2 of the attackers with them. "But maybe that's exactly what you need right now," Taemin continued. "Not beings of light who solve problems with divine wisdom. Maybe you need something that knows how to kill things that need killing. Maybe you need Deathworlders." The battle raged around them as he spoke, humans and machines locked in a dance of death among the stars. Commander Hyojin's Marines had managed to board another void swarm ship, fighting through corridors filled with spinning blades and toxic gas that would have killed most species in seconds. But humans had evolved in toxicity and violence, and they pushed forward anyway. "Your prophecy was wrong about one thing," Taemin said, addressing the Altarians directly. "We didn't come here to bring you salvation. We came here to bring your enemies death. We came here to stand between you and the dark, not because we're perfect, but because somebody has to, and we're too stupid to know when to quit." Dr. Wu Jin, monitoring the Altarian communications, saw something remarkable happening. The crystal beings were beginning to stand up. Not all of them, but some. They were moving toward their weapon storage areas, places they hadn't visited in generations, because their culture had moved beyond violence. But watching humans die for them was changing something fundamental in their thinking. "Admiral," Sora called out, "we've got a breakthrough. The Marines found something in the Void Swarm databanks. These machines aren't just randomly destroying worlds, they're looking for something, some kind of test." Before Taemin could ask for details, new contacts appeared on the tactical display. But these weren't more Void Swarm ships. These were Altarian vessels, ancient and beautiful, rising from hidden bays beneath their cities. They were ships of exploration and art, never meant for war, but their crews were finally ready to fight. Ambassador Veltar's voice came through the communication system, shaking but determined. "Admiral Taemin, we understand now. The prophecy spoke of the chosen ones bringing balance to the universe. We thought that meant bringing peace, but maybe it means bringing justice. Maybe it means fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves." The first Altarian ship to enter the battle was destroyed within minutes, its crew unprepared for the reality of combat. But the second ship learned from the first, and the third learned from the second. They had called for saviors and received teachers instead, humans who showed them that sometimes the only way to save what you love is to be willing to die for it. All ships, Taemin ordered, form up with our new allies. Let's show this swarm what happens when Deathworlders and peaceful people decide to fight together. The battle was far from over, but something had changed. The Altarians had expected gods and received mortals instead. But perhaps Taemin thought as he watched crystal ships and human vessels fighting side by side, mortals who chose to fight for others were more divine than any god who simply waved problems away. The real test was just beginning. The combined human and Altarian fleet was losing badly. For every Void Swarm ship they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Captain Sora's Iron Dawn had taken so much damage that half her systems were offline, but she kept fighting with the stubborn refusal to die that marked her species. "Admiral," she called to Taemin through gritted teeth as another explosion rocked the bridge. "We need to try Protocol Omega." Commander Hai-Jin looked up from her tactical display, her face grim. "Sir, Protocol Omega has never been tested on this scale. The casualty projections are better than the certainty of total annihilation if we keep fighting conventionally," Taemin finished. He looked around his damaged bridge at his battered crew. They had followed him into hell, and now he was asking them to dive deeper. Do it. Protocol Omega was humanity's most desperate battle tactic, developed during the bloodiest wars on Earth, when survival meant doing things that no sane species would ever consider. It required every ship in the fleet to act independently while appearing to act randomly, creating chaos so complete that even friendly forces couldn't predict what would happen next. "All ships," Taemin broadcast to his scattered fleet, "execute Protocol Omega. Scatter and engage at will. Make them chase us, make them split their forces, and make them regret ever coming to this system." What followed looked like madness to anyone watching. Human ships broke formation and flew in seemingly random directions, some diving toward the planet's surface, others heading for the outer system, still others charging directly at the largest Void Swarm vessels. Each ship began broadcasting different signals. Some played human music at maximum volume, others transmitted battle cries in a dozen different languages, and a few simply screamed defiance at their mechanical enemies. The Altarians watching from their shelters couldn't understand what they were seeing. Ambassador Veltar stared at the tactical displays in confusion as the human fleet appeared to completely lose cohesion. "Have they gone insane?" one of his advisors asked. "Their formation is completely broken. They're flying in all directions at once." But Dr. Wu Jin, still aboard the Iron Dawn, was monitoring both human and Void Swarm communications. What looked like chaos to the Altarians was actually the most sophisticated form of warfare humans had ever developed. Each seemingly random movement was part of a larger pattern, one that forced the enemy to split their attention and resources. "The swarm is having trouble processing our movements," he reported to Taemin. "Their tactical computers are designed to fight organized formations. They don't know how to handle complete unpredictability." Captain Sora took advantage of the confusion to lead her ship on a diving run toward the planet's surface, broadcasting an ancient human war song at full volume. The Void Swarm ships tried to follow, but she was flying her vessel like a fighter pilot, using the planet's gravity and atmosphere to perform maneuvers that should have torn her ship apart. "This is Captain Sora to all human vessels," she called out, her voice carrying over the chaos of battle. "They want to see how we fight? Let's show them what Deathworlders really look like." Commander Hai-Jin was leading the most dangerous part of the operation, taking her Marines on a boarding assault against the largest Void Swarm ship in the system. It was a vessel the size of a city, bristling with weapons and defenses that had never been breached. But humans had a saying that went back to their ancient wars: if you can't go through something, go around it, and if you can't go around it, go through it anyway. "Remember," she told her Marines as their assault ships approached the enemy vessel, "these machines think in straight lines. We don't. Use that against them." The boarding operation was a nightmare of spinning blades, toxic gas, and automated defenses that filled every corridor. But humans had evolved in nightmares, and they pushed forward with the kind of stubborn determination that had carried their species from caves to stars. Meanwhile, the Altarians were beginning to understand what they were witnessing. Their ships, beautiful and graceful, were learning to fight alongside the crude but effective human vessels. Where human tactics were like sledgehammers, Altarian technology was like a scalpel, and together they were proving more effective than either could be alone. Their fighting makes no sense, Veltar said, watching a human corvette ram itself into a void swarm cruiser, while an Altarian ship used its advanced shields to protect them both from the resulting explosion. But somehow it works. Maybe that's the point, another Altarian replied. Maybe fighting is supposed to be senseless. Maybe the willingness to do the impossible is what makes it possible. Deep inside the Void Swarm command ship, Commander Hijin and her Marines finally reached the central control core. What they found there changed everything they thought they knew about their enemy. The core wasn't just a computer. It was a vast chamber filled with organic components, brains, and nervous systems, harvested from thousands of different species. "My God," whispered one of her sergeants, staring at the horror before them. "It's not just a machine. It's using the minds of everyone it's killed to make itself smarter." Hyojin studied the grotesque fusion of organic and mechanical components with a warrior's eye. "Can we shut it down?" "Maybe," her technical specialist replied, "but we'd need to interface directly with the system. And that means someone has to plug their brain into this thing," Hyojin finished grimly. She looked around at her Marines, all of them volunteers who had known this mission might be suicide. "I'll do it." "Ma'am, no," her sergeant protested. "If that thing gets into your head, then you'll put a bullet in my head before I can compromise the mission," Hyojin said simply. She began connecting the interface cables to her combat helmet, knowing that she was about to risk everything on a gamble that might kill her, and everyone she was trying to save. Back on the Iron Dawn, Admiral Tae-min was coordinating the final phase of Protocol Omega when Dr. Wu Jin made a shocking discovery. "Admiral," the scientist called out, "I've been analyzing the Void Swarm's targeting patterns. They're not trying to kill us efficiently. They're testing us. Every move they make is designed to see how we'll respond." "Testing us for what?" Tae-min demanded. "I don't know. But I think Commander Hyojin is about to find out." Inside the swarm ship, Hyojin activated the neural interface and felt her consciousness merge with the vast mechanical intelligence that controlled the enemy fleet. For a terrifying moment, she was lost in an ocean of alien thought, surrounded by the screams of 1,000 conquered species. But then she found something else, a presence that wasn't machine or organic, but something far older and stranger. It spoke to her in concepts rather than words, and what it told her changed everything. The Void Swarm wasn't an invasion force. It was a test, created eons ago by beings who had transcended physical existence. They had seeded the galaxy with life and then created this trial to find worthy successors. Every species faced the same choice when the swarm came: flee, hide, surrender, or fight for others even when fighting meant certain death. Most species chose one of the first three options. Only humans had chosen to fight for strangers, even knowing they would probably die in the attempt. They had passed a test they didn't even know they were taking. "All Void Swarm units," the ancient presence commanded through the network, "cease combat operations. The trial is complete. These beings have proven themselves worthy." Across the battlefield, the mechanical ships suddenly stopped fighting. Their weapons powered down, their movement ceased, and for the first time in the battle, there was silence. Commander Hyojin disconnected from the interface, her mind reeling from what she had experienced. Through her communicator, she could hear Admiral Tae-min demanding to know what had happened. "Sir," she said weakly, "I think we just passed a test we never knew we were taking." The silence that followed the end of the battle was more unsettling than the fighting had been. Across the space around Altair Prime, human and Altarian ships drifted among the geometric forms of the now motionless Void Swarm fleet. Nothing moved except the occasional piece of debris spinning slowly in the vacuum. Admiral Tae-min stood on his damaged bridge, trying to understand what Commander Hyojin had just told him. "A test?" he said into his communicator. The entire invasion. Was a test? Yes, sir, Hyjin replied from deep inside the swarm command ship. I'm still connected to their network. The beings who created this test, and they call themselves the architects. They've been gone from this galaxy for millions of years, but they left the swarm behind to find worthy successors. Dr. Wu Jin, monitoring the conversation, shook his head in amazement. Successors to what? Before Hyjin could answer, the space around the Iron Dawn began to shimmer. Something was materializing. Not a ship, but a presence that existed partly in physical space and partly somewhere else entirely. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. Greetings, children of Earth, the architect said. We have watched your species for some time, but we needed to be certain. The galaxy is vast and full of dangers that your current technology cannot imagine. It needs guardians who will protect the innocent not for reward or glory, but simply because it is right. Captain Sora, still manning her damaged ship, couldn't hide her skepticism. And you decided to test us by having your machines attack innocent people? How is that protecting anyone? The Altarians were never in true danger, the architect replied. Had you failed our test, we would have simply relocated them to a safer world. But you succeeded beyond our expectations. When faced with impossible odds, your species chose to fight for strangers rather than flee to safety. Ambassador Veltar's voice crackled over the communication system from the planet below. The prophecy, he whispered. It was real, but not in the way we understood it. You didn't come to save us with divine light. You came to save us by becoming the light ourselves. Taemin looked around his bridge at his battered crew. They didn't look like divine beings, they looked like tired, scared people who had somehow survived another impossible battle. What exactly are you asking us to do? We offer humanity a choice, the architect said. Your species can continue as it has, exploring your local region of space and growing at your own pace. Or you can accept the role of galactic guardians, protecting species that cannot protect themselves from threats they cannot imagine. What kind of threats? Hyjin asked from her position inside the swarm ship. The answer came in the form of images transmitted directly to their minds. They saw worlds consumed by living darkness, species transformed into crystalline hive minds, and ancient weapons that could crack planets like eggs. The galaxy was beautiful, but it was also more dangerous than humanity had ever imagined. The choice is yours, the architect said. We will not force this burden upon you, but know that if you accept, you will not face it alone. Every species that has shown courage in the face of darkness will stand with you. Taemin thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who had never seen the stars but trusted their military to keep them safe. He thought about the Altarians who had expected gods but had settled for soldiers. He thought about all the other species out there who might one day need someone to stand between them and the dark. We need time to discuss this, he said finally. Of course, the architect replied. But while you decide, perhaps you should see what you have already accomplished. The view screen changed, showing feeds from across the galaxy. Dozens of species were receiving news of what had happened at Altair Prime. The story was already becoming legend. The Deathworlders who had answered a call for help and taught an entire species to fight for what they loved. More importantly, other species were beginning to volunteer. The message was spreading that humanity was looking for allies, not subjects. They wanted partners who would stand and fight when darkness came calling, not followers who would bow and pray for salvation. 5 years later, Admiral Taemin stood on the bridge of a very different ship. The Iron Dawn had been rebuilt and expanded, incorporating technology from a dozen different species. Around him, his crew included not just humans, but Altarians, Zentaurians, and half a dozen other species who had volunteered to serve with the Galactic Defense Force. Captain Sora, now an admiral herself, commanded a fleet of ships that bore names like Righteous Fury, Final Stand, and No Retreat. Each vessel was crewed by beings who had learned human military doctrine and adapted it to their own abilities. Dr. Wu Jin had become the first human ambassador to the Galactic Council, where his job was to explain why humans insisted on training everyone to fight instead of simply protecting them. His standard response had become, "You can't protect someone forever. but you can teach them to protect themselves. Commander Hyejin ran the Deathworld Academy on a planet that had been specifically terraformed to be as dangerous as possible. Volunteers from across the galaxy came there to learn not just human fighting techniques, but human philosophy, that freedom was worth dying for, that the innocent deserved protection, and that sometimes the only way to stop evil was to be willing to do violence against it. The Altarians had become humanity's closest allies, their crystal ships now armed with human weapons and their crews trained in human tactics. Ambassador Veltar often said that his people had called for gods and received something better, teachers who showed them that divinity wasn't about power, but about choosing to use whatever power you had to protect others. On this particular day, Taemin was responding to another distress call. The message came from a species of insectoid beings whose world was being consumed by something called the Hunger, a force that ate reality itself. They begged for help from the legendary Deathworlders who had saved the Altarians. Admiral? Sora's voice came over the communicator from her own ship. Long-range sensors show the enemy has technology we've never encountered. This could be another impossible fight. Taemin looked around his bridge at the mixed crew of humans and aliens who had volunteered to serve together. They came from worlds of peace and worlds of war, from species that had known violence and species that had never seen a weapon until humans taught them to build one. All ships, he ordered, jump to hyperspace. Let's go teach someone else that. Salvation isn't a gift from above. It's something you earn by standing up and fighting for what's right. As the fleet disappeared into hyperspace, the stars themselves seemed to approve. Across the galaxy, species that had once cowered in fear, when danger approached, now stood ready to fight. The Deathworlders had taught them that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. They had wanted gods, but they had received something far more valuable: the knowledge that ordinary people could become extraordinary when they chose to protect others instead of themselves. The galaxy was still dangerous, but it was no longer defenseless. And somewhere in the space between stars, the ancient architects watched and approved of what their test had created. Not a species of conquerors, but a family of guardians who would stand together against the dark.